G'day, how you going? My name is Brendan. I am a UAV operator here in Australia, and thanks for tuning in. Today, the whole purpose of this video is to really give you, or anybody really, the chance to really understand the basic entry point on how to get started with mapping or surveying with a drone. So the main drive and purpose of this video was to really try and strip it down to the basics of what everyone needs just to get started. Now, this is a really basic entry level type of video. This is just for anybody that really has absolutely no idea about the space, doesn't really know how to navigate their way through some of the information out there. And don't get me wrong, there are a lot of information out there. So it's really hard for operators these days to make a decision on what way they need to go to be able to even just start and try mapping and getting into the world of photogrammetry and things like that. So that's the whole reason for the video today. So just a couple of housekeeping things. If you've got any questions or there's any topics or anything like that that you guys want covered, essentially, then just make sure you put them in the comments. It's the best way for me to understand what you guys are looking for. The main purpose for this video, like I said, is that to give you a better understanding on how to get started with mapping. For me, if there was hopefully a video like this out when I was starting, it would have been a massive help. So that's the whole purpose. Now, I just want to make sure that when we're out there mapping, surveying, whatever you want to call it, we have to understand that we aren't surveyors. And I'm sure a lot of you already know that, but I thought it's probably worth saying that because what we are doing is some form of surveying and mapping, and we're providing some form of service if that's what you're looking at doing, or maybe you just want to do it at your local park or your own home. So if you are looking at doing this for some form of job, or service within a drone service business, just make sure you're not claiming that you are a surveyor. If you are a surveyor, then that's a different story. But we want to make sure that what we are pushing is the ability to use drone technology to be able to help people within the surveying or mapping world. And that can be from construction to surveyors themselves, working with universities out there, mapping rural areas, farmers and things like that. So just want to make sure that we're all on the same page as we're going through this video. Alright, so the big question, what do I need to get started? And that's probably the biggest question that I had when I was starting my journey within mapping with drones and everything like that. And there is a heap of information out there of, oh, I need this type of drone, that type of drone, I have to sign up to this type of software, I need to be able to do this and X, Y, and Z. And it is mind-boggling sometimes of trying to figure out the best way to go about it. And for me, I hate overcomplicating things, and I really like a simple workflow and something that's going to work or give me some form of result every time. Consistency is key in my world. So when we are looking at how to start, what we're doing and everything like that, for me, you can't go past some form of drone like a DJI brand. DJI obviously is dominating the market these days in drones, and I think it's probably the easiest and best entry point to start with your mapping journey. Now, there are some limitations. So you might go ahead and choose a drone, but then on the flip side, the software that you're going to be creating flight plans might not work with that type of drone. So what I would recommend is going out, looking at the drones that you think are going to be right, and then also going back and looking at the software that you're thinking about using. And don't worry, we'll touch base around the softwares and types of drones that I use a little bit later in this video as well. But what we need to make sure is that the drone that you have is compatible with some of the softwares out there. If it's not, what's the other options? And then building out from there. So, what's my recommendation? If I was starting fresh, had no drone whatsoever, and you're reading that, oh, I need a Phantom, or I need a Matrice 300, or no, actually you need the Inspire. You need to go out and buy the Inspire. These are all the questions that I got and I came across, and I was just like, what is the right answer? What is the way to go about this? If I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing, I really just want to try it. I want to get into drones. I don't really know how to. So for me, if you're really just starting out, I would start super basic. I would be looking at something like a Mavic 2 Pro or a Phantom 4 Pro. Absolutely. The Phantom 4s are the workhorse of drones at the moment. Absolutely. The Inspires or the Matrices and the Matrice 300s are absolute workhorses, and they are an amazing piece of kit. But at the same time, you're going to be paying tens of thousands of dollars to be able to have that type of gear. And for me, if I can keep it simple and basic and still get the same results as something like a Matrice 300 would have, and look, don't get me wrong, Matrice 300s is an amazing piece of gear, and the payloads and everything like that you can have on that UAV is amazing. But if you're just looking at doing basic maps, ortho mosaics, and even eventually going up into the 3D models, then a Mavic 2 Pro or a Phantom 4 of some sort is going to be your go-to to start with. And that's my personal opinion. You can do your own homework, spend whatever sort of money you want, but in my eyes, if I can go and spend $2,500 on a drone, and I'm going to be able to have it compatible with pretty much all the softwares out there on the market to be able to create flight plans, then in my mind, that's a no-brainer to get started. It's a really low barrier of entry, and I would highly recommend going down that path. And for me, that's exactly what I use. I use Phantom 4s pretty much all day, every day. And I think that, for me, speaks wonders. And the only reason I use Phantoms is that if, for God knows whatever reason, it carks it, or it crashes, or it just falls out of the sky for whatever reason, I can just literally go down to the shops, go pick up a brand new one. I've got all the batteries, they're ready to go, update the firmware, and I'm back out on the road. So for me, I would go Phantoms, Mavics, maybe think about going Mavics. At this point in time, from my understanding, I think they're discontinuing the Mavic 2 Pros, and now you've got the Mavic 3 coming out. So my understanding, these softwares haven't caught up with keeping up with all of DJI's drones. So again, make sure you go and check what drone you have, if it's compatible with the mapping software, and then making a decision from there. Now we can go into talking about the software. And the software is probably one of the most important parts when we're creating flight plans and actually completing the mission to be able to capture the data to be able to create an ortho mosaic or a high resolution model. Now, when I say ortho mosaic, and you may not understand what ortho mosaic means, that's absolutely fine. Essentially, it's just a high resolution map of an area or building or whatever you're mapping. Think of it as maybe Google Maps on steroids. Sometimes you can get resolution within the map that you can zoom in onto a 50-cent piece if you've got it on the ground and understand and see that it is a 50-cent piece. So we're really playing with quite high resolution imagery at a large scale. So going back to softwares or apps, whatever you want to call it, there's heaps on the market. And again, the way you choose the softwares will also depend on what drone you have and vice versa. So for me, there's companies out there like Drone Deploy, Drone Harmony, Pix4d, Maps Made Easy, and even DJI's own GSD, I think it's called, or GSP, I can't remember. Anyway, there's a heap out there. So for me, I like free and I also like simplicity. So again, we don't want to be overcomplicating something when we're out in the field. And for me, my go-to capture app or flight planning app at the moment is Pix4d Capture App. And then the only reason for that is that it works seamlessly on an iPad, an iPhone, whatever you want to use. And it has everything that you need. It's not overcomplicated. It's got what you call double grid and single grid missions. It's got an orbit mission as well as a polygon mission as well. So allowing you to determine exactly where you want the drone to fly. I think there's linear as well from memory. And look, later on in this video, we'll deep dive into that a little bit more around how to set that up and going through the workflow with that. So for me, I would be using Pix4d, and that also allows me to decide where I'm going to take that data and process it. And a lot of them allow you to do that as well. But if we're using drone deploy and things like that, really, if you're going to be going down the drone deploy route, you're probably going to sit within that ecosystem of using drone deploy. And maybe that's another video that we can create if you guys want that, is understanding what types of platforms there are out there and how to navigate through that world as well. So I choose Pix4d. Again, simplistic, super easy to use, and it's not overly complicated. So we really want to stick to a basic workflow, especially when we're starting out. We don't want to have to overcomplicate things and confuse yourself around what needs to be done. Have I allowed X, Y, and Z into my mapping system? Now I think we can jump into talking about our first mapping mission. And really, I think what you have to do first up is decide what type of area you want to map. And when we decide that, we have to make sure that we're allowed to fly there, especially here in Australia. It's almost impossible sometimes to figure out whether we can or cannot fly in a certain area, but there are some really amazing tools out there for us to be able to find that out. There's apps, web browser apps, things like that that we can use. And probably the two most popular at the moment, I would say, is OpenSky and OK2Fly. And I'll link them both down in the show notes just below, and for you guys to check out yourself. So the benefits of both of these apps are that essentially you can take a drop pin location or put your location of where you want to, or thinking about mapping, and it will actually bring up all the airspace classifications. And this is really important when we're coming into drone flying and drone operations, is that understanding that when we are flying, we're actually going to be sharing the airspace with other aircraft. And as drone operators, we have to give manned aircraft the obligation to be right of way, essentially. So I'm not going to deep dive into the rules and regulations. We can maybe do that another day, but just be sure you're checking the airspace. As long as you're not within 3 nautical miles of an airport, you're avoiding the chances of the public and other people coming into the operation when you're flying, and you're not really, what's the best way? You're not intruding on people's privacy as well. So flying over suburbs and things like that is probably not a great option. So for me, I would possibly think about going down to your local park or your footy oval when no one's around in a later afternoon or during the day, going down to maybe even wanting to map a clubhouse, a footy clubhouse or something like that. But again, make sure you're not flying within 30 meters of people. Maybe you have to get up early in the morning or whatever it might be. Just play it safe. You don't want to be toeing the line, I guess, around drone operations here in Australia, because just, I guess, between you and me, we all know there's a lot of people out there that as soon as they see a drone in the air, they think that they're the object of interest and they're really important, and you're taking photos of them and videoing them and all that's exciting stuff. And little do they know, most of the time they're not overly that important, and we don't really care about them being in the shot, but a lot of people do care. So please, just a word of warning, some people get really angry and really upset when there's drones flying around them, so you just have to be careful. Okay, so let's deep dive into the app. I'm going to do a screen recording of the app and do a workflow setting up a basic mapping mission. We'll go through that workflow and we'll go from there. So we're in our iPad, iPhone, whatever you want to use. Just make sure you download the app properly. So from here, if you haven't opened up the map yet, what you want to do is register yourself with Pix4d. So when we go through Pix4d, it's going to be opening up a world of exciting things and different types of mapping missions. So just make sure that you've registered, and then we will come to our home screen. Now our home screen will give us multiple types of mapping missions, where you can see that we've got the polygon for 2D maps our grid for 2D maps, our double grid for 3D models, our circular for single 3D models, and a free flight event for advanced users. We've also got projects and tutorial hub. Now, I'm not going to jump into this too much around what we're doing and each mission and how the app works. Really what I'm going to do today is talk to you about the grid mission for 2D maps, which is the box, and we can go from there. So what I would do is I would click on the grid mission for 2D maps. We click on that. What that's going to do is bring up a location of either where you are in the world or an area that you're thinking about mapping. So for me, I've got over an oval, which is great. It's probably going to be an ideal situation. So what you want to do is, if you can't see the green box with an X in the middle and some arrows, all you got to do is just tap the screen. From there, once you tap the screen, that will create the green box and the flight path area for you. That green box is basically showing you exactly that flight path. So we can see within the box that there's some white lines. Those white lines are going to be the path that your UAV is going to follow autonomously while we're going through the mapping mission. So what we want to do is we want to take that green box, hover it over the area that you want to map. And for me, it's just going to probably be these two buildings, and from memory, they look like tennis courts. So what we're going to do is just put the box over those areas. Now we can use those arrows to rotate the box, move it around, get the right angle, get the areas and the flight paths that we want to be flying, and then also move it up and down using the middle cross X arrows. It's probably the best way I can describe it right now. But from there, we can obviously see that we've got our area covered that we want to map. Now, on the left-hand side, we can see that there is a wheel that allows us to increase the height or the elevation we are flying, and also decrease it. So when we're choosing this height for our mission, we really want to make sure that we are going to be flying above the highest point in that area. And what do I mean by that? So maybe we're doing a building like we are today, and the building's only maybe 5 meters tall. However, we've got trees, or we've got power lines, or we've got other things around us that are higher that our mapping mission is actually covering. So from there, we need to make sure that, I always say we want to be 3 to 5 meters at a minimum above the highest point of that area. Now, how do I figure that out? There's a couple of ways. You can have some form of laser measurement tool with you and ping a laser to the highest point or a rough point out in the field, or we can go from or we can turn the drone on, go into the DJI app, manually fly the drone up to the highest point, and then add another 5 meters, or get to a point where we know we're clear of the highest point or the biggest tree or whatever it is in the area, and then add another 3 meters to the mission. Now, there are going to be things that we can't control around that, so we're going to have to work within the parameters of the area. So sometimes maybe it's best just to start off and do an oval or a section of an oval where there's absolutely nothing that you can run into, but you're able to sort of play around with different heights. Now, when we change the height and elevation that we're going to be operating at, that also changes a thing called the GSD. And we can see the GSD number just above the elevation tool or setting within the app. And the GSD stands for ground sampling distance. And essentially that, in basic terms, that tells us the resolution our images are going to be at. So essentially, the lower the the lower the photo, the more high res map we're going to be able to create. Now, really, in basic terms, think about how close you want to be to something to be able to find something. So maybe we're doing some form of roof inspection, and you want to be able to see within the gutters, see if there's block gutters and things like that. The best way for me to sort of get you guys out there and working and understanding how GSD works is that I would highly recommend maybe putting out a piece of paper on the ground with some writing on it, and then taking multiple photos at different heights for you to understand what the resolution is going to look like from the drone that you guys are using. So don't freak out that it's super blurry or whatever. Just do multiple different missions at different heights, and that's the best way you can learn, in all honesty. It's honestly the best way. I would highly recommend at any point that if you're trying to learn something, just trial things. Different heights, different angles, whatever you want to do, large areas, small areas. Just make sure that you're trying something, not just giving it a crack, it didn't work the first time and give up. The best way for you to get really good at mapping and surveying and those sorts of things is continuously trying different things in new ways. And we can deep dive into that a little bit more, maybe in another video. But what I would say is most of the time we can go to about 40 meters and we're going to be absolutely fine with trees and things like that in most areas. And we can see that the GSD that gives us is about 1.09 centimeters per pixel. So every pixel within the image that we take is going to be roughly about 1 centimeter within a measurement. So if we finally create a map of an area, we have got a 1 centimeter relative accuracy within the photo. So what that means is that if I take a measurement tool on that high resolution map, I'm going to be somewhat within 1 centimeter accuracy when I'm measuring a meter. So if I measure a meter in real life and then measure that same area on the map once I've post-processed it, I should be within 1 centimeter or 10 mil accuracy for measurements. Now that's different to absolute accuracy of where it sits in the world, and that's where surveyors come into play. But the maps itself are going to be relative to each other depending on the GSD that we have collected. Okay, so we've defined our mapping area. We've decided the height that we want to operate at. We've decided that through a couple of things. Is the highest point. We're making sure that we are above the highest point in the area, and we're also covering the area that we want as well. Now, we want to go up into the right-hand corner of the screen, and we can see the settings wheel, or that gear wheel. And what that will tell us is, this will give us a little bit more in-depth information around our mission. And we can go into that, and once we go into that, we can see that we got the camera angles, we've got our front lap, side overlap, our drone speed, and then we can go into more advanced settings. But look, you don't have to go into that if you don't want to, but you can change your white balance and things like that depending on the day. That is probably one thing that you might want to consider. If it is a really, really sunny day, you want to accommodate to that white balance. For me, I will always keep the drone on fast, and all the way to the fast end, so we can go fast or slow. If it's a super sunny day, I might go mid-range or slow down the drone just to try and reduce some of the motion blur that we get within the images, which also helps post-processing. So what we want to do is then go to camera angle. Camera angle is when we're just doing a map, we want to have it pointing straight down. And straight down is basically, in other words, called nadir. And nadir is like 90 degrees to the ground, whatever it is. But most of the time, if you're coming into this space or speaking to other people, most people will use the term nadir. And you can say whatever you want, but that's kind of the way people are at the moment. Now, once we've done that, we want to go on to the next section. Next section is front and side overlap. So front and side overlap are probably are a really important step in making sure that we've got enough overlap between the photos. And what that allows us to do is, when we're post-processing this data into a map, is that we have enough overlap between each photo. And the reason that's important is because we need to have at least, at a minimum, 3 photos seeing the same thing. So think about it, if we're mapping a footy club, there's going to be some features, maybe we say a bin. There's going to be a bin, and that bin needs to be seen in 3 photos at the same time. They can be in different parts of that photo, but it needs to be seen at a minimum 3 times. So for us to be able to do that, we want to probably keep our overlap, our front and side overlap, at about 75. So all you got to do is take that all the way up to 75 for your front and also your side overlap, and that will give us more than enough overlap between the 2 missions that we're doing. So once we've done that, we've kind of almost set up our first mapping mission. So what we need to do then is just go back to our main menu, and what we can see is that the actual flight path lines have increased. And the only reason that's increased is because we've increased the front and side overlap. Increasing front and side overlap is going to create more mapping or flight path lines within that mission, and then that's obviously increasing the time. But when we look at our mission here, we've got an area which is 125 by 22 meters, and it's going to take us 6 minutes to complete that mission, which is really not that long, which is great. Okay. So we can see that our starting point for me is going to be over to the north side of our flight path, and the ending mission is going to be to the south of that flight path area. Now we can change that. For me, I always like to have the end of that mission closest to me, just in case something goes wrong or whatever it might be. End mission is always closest to me. So we can change that by going into the settings and using that arrow, rotating it around, and swapping start to finish, what ends we at, and this all depends on where you are actually set up on the day. So once you got that sorted, all you have to do is go down to the right hand corner, bottom right hand corner, press start, and then you need to connect the drone. It will go through its syncing process. It has multiple green boxes that it needs to tick. Once that's all ticked, we can go next and then basically press start, and it will take off. It will complete the mission. It will return home once it has completed the mission, and we are done. We've basically finished our first mapping mission. Once we've finished our mission, then we've got all these photos, right? We're going, okay, I've got all these photos. What am I going to do with these photos? How am I going to actually get these photos to a map that I want? And so there's a heap of options. I think really if you want an end-to-end solution, maybe drone deploy is going to be the best option for you. You can map it, upload it, sync it, it'll map it, it'll process it all together, and you're good to go. You can also use Pix4d as well, but please keep in mind a lot of these softwares are actually quite expensive and it's quite annoying. There is another option. What you can do, there's other platforms out there, and actually processing platforms as well, that you can process this yourself. You don't have to send it off to someone else. So there's something called reality capture, even capturing reality, 2 different softwares. Bentley Context Capture, that's probably the Rolls Royce of all the softwares out there, and just so you guys know, it's probably about $5,500 for a yearly subscription for Bentley Context Capture. Now, capturing reality, on the other hand, I think that's what it's called. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. That's free to use, free to download, sorry, and then you can pay per use. You don't have to buy it. You can just pay for the amount of what we call gigapixels to process those images. And it's okay to use. It's okay to sort of navigate through and use. There's a lot of awesome tutorials on YouTube to be able to learn and understand how to process a data set. But again, that's totally up to you, and we can deep dive into that another day. The other option is that you can send it off to a platform, which are really great, and there's two probably big players here in Australia that are doing amazing work in this space with visualizing drone data, 3D models, orthomosaics, and they're two companies. One called Scand, and they're spelled S-K-A-N-D, and the other one is called Transspec. And what I would say is go check out both. For me personally, the way my workflow and the type of data I'm collecting, it's multiple different types of data. I use Scand, so they're great. They're a Melbourne-based software company, and they're really, really cool, and they're amazing at what they're doing. Again, Transspec, I know the guys at Transspec as well. They're doing some awesome stuff, and some of the 3D models that these guys can create and help you with are absolutely phenomenal. So really do your own homework. It's totally up to you guys of what way you want to go, so make sure you check that out. But if you want a really basic entry level, any of those, I think either Drone Deploy, Scand, or a Transspec platform is going to be great. And you're going to be able to see results pretty much instantly. So let me know what way you choose, because I'm always curious around who's who and what's what and what people see as valuable. So let me know down in the comments. If you're worried about batteries, now you say, oh Brendan, I've got a 27-minute flight that I need to do, or it's going to take me 45 minutes to complete the area that I want. And you're like, well, that's fine. No stress at all, because within the Pix4d app and other apps out there, you're definitely going to be able to pause the mission. It'll tell you, it even tells you, like the DJI app, when you've reached a critical battery level or a certain battery level, to say you need to return home. We don't have enough battery to be able to complete the mission. So we want to take that, once you hear that alarm, pause the mission. You can either manually fly that back to you, or you can press the return home button within the Pix4d app. It will return back to where it took off from. You can swap out the battery, load it all up, turn it all on, and then from there you have the ability to basically go through that start mission again. Press start, it will take off, and it will return back to where it last finished. So if it was halfway through the map, it will go back to that last photo, it will start taking photos again, and complete the mission. And you can do that as many times as you want, and it's great. It's not like you have to do 10-15 minute missions to ensure that you're going to get a full battery out of it, and the mission's not going to be able to held up across multiple different battery changes. So that's really, really good and really important. So I think really for now that is probably more than enough information to go ahead and give your first mapping mission a crack. Again, I'm going to link some of the things down below for airspace checks and things like that. But if you have absolutely any questions about how to get started, please comment below and let me know, because I'm more than happy to help out. And I really want people out there that want to get into this space, really be successful at it, and we can go from there. So thanks for tuning in. Again, if there's any other topics that you want me to cover, or you have questions about, you want me to make a video on, please let me know. I'm happy to transfer over some of the knowledge that I have in this space of all the trials and errors that I've made along the way. And I think it's really important for everyone within the drone space to understand where people have come from and where they're going to and where they want to go with their drone operation journey, maybe we can call it. So good luck on your first mission. Let me know how you go, let me know how it's a success, and we can go from there.